And social pressure is very strong. I mean, if you're like, man, did you notice this? This is weird. And your best friend, whom you know and trust, you've been friends since you were kids, which that's a creepy line. They've been best friends since 7 years old. What sort of sociopathic child did you find to become his friend at 7 years old and know that, like, and they're not raised believing that all of this is real. And your best friend whom you trust and you love says, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, that's okay. And then they move on. What are you going to do? You're just gonna be like, all right, I guess I'm seeing things, or like, this is weird.
Welcome to Socrates at the Cinema, where every episode we look at one great idea through one great film by having a great conversation about the questions that define our lives. So grab the popcorn and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Socrates at the Cinema. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Nathaniel Boggs. Nathaniel, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And today, we're going to be discussing the 1998 film, The Truman Show. This is a film that came out when I would have been right around when I was sort of graduating high school, end of the 20th century.
A 19th century film, interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so this film is getting close to 30 years old, and which is kind of hard for me to believe. But this was directed by Peter Weir, written by Andrew Niccol. And as we were discussing, Niccol was just coming off having written the movie Gattaca, which is another kind of very sort of science fiction type film that's really, really good. And Peter Weir at this point was a very well-known director. He would also go on to direct Master and Commander. He also directed Dead Poet Society. So a lot of good pedigree with this writer and director combo. I don't think I need to give a lot of background to The Truman Show. Again, a movie that's almost 30 years old, hopefully. But just as a reminder to everyone to set up the context for you and I in our discussion, The Truman Show, starring Jim Carrey. I don't know if this is one of his first more dramatic roles or not. I forget now. I'd have to look up his filmography as well. But he certainly was coming off the great success of Ace Ventura and The Mask, and I think he was looking for more serious roles. Even though this was, but this is a very dramatic role for him, and I think he's excellent in it. But this is also coming on the cusp of what we now know today as reality television. And reality television was very much in its infancy when this film came out. It was very much a new thing. You had MTV had The Real World, and then I think there was Road Rules. So MTV was kind of was sort of the forerunner of some of this, and there had been some international TV shows like this as well. But the basic premise of The Truman Show is that that Truman, the main character, is himself living a reality television show. Everything he does is recorded. It's presented as sort of the life of Truman, and most importantly, he doesn't know it. He was apparently adopted by a corporation. And they tracked his birth and they've been tracking his entire life as a reality television show. They construct this giant fake world that he inhabits where they control all elements of weather, and they can conjure up storms at any point, make it day or night. And so, but he doesn't know that his whole life is a reality television show that everyone else is watching. And for the most part, it seems that the reality that's been constructed for him is very much based on, the world, right? Apparently the star systems or the actual star systems and those kinds of things, which is an interesting choice of why they felt the need to do that. Maybe it's more relatable for the viewers. I don't know. And so there's this tension then, and they let you know this right at the beginning of the film, that this is not like you as an audience member discovers that this is all a reality show. It's the opening sequence is sort of the justification for why they've made this reality show, and then you jump into it. And for each episode of our channel here at our podcast is that we want to look at one film and one idea that's related or that's explored in that film. And the obvious choice for this one, I think, is the idea of truth. and how truth relates in our lives and why it matters and what it is. And at the most basic level, the most popular sort of or historically defended definition of truth is what we would call the correspondence theory of truth, that truth is when a statement matches the way things are in reality. A good philosophical way to think about it is, if you know what a lie is, then you know what truth is, because a lie is when you intentionally misreport what you think is true. And so if you understand what a lie is, then you understand what this definition of truth is. So if I say the sky is green and I look and the sky is not green, we can say that that statement is false. Right. And that's just a very sort of philosophical basic. And there are other theories of truth I'm sure we're going to discuss here. But that's kind of the idea and so the first question that we want to attack is this question of, is Truman living a lie? Because it's a question of the relationship between sort of what's in my mind and what's in reality. And how would you answer that question as we just start out? And what would it mean to live a lie? What do you think?
Yeah, I think usually when people say that someone is living a lie, it's someone they're referring to a person who's pretending, or they're living a fake life. They have a fake identity or something.
Okay.
And so in that sense, Truman is not living a lie, right? He doesn't have a fake identity. His internal conception of himself, he plays it out in the world. Like he doesn't disguise himself
Right.
beyond the usual. I mean, there are some things, I guess,
Right.
uh, based on his memories of
Right.
kind of breaks in his reality that maybe we can get onto later. But generally, his persona, his thoughts, his feelings, those are those are accurate representations of his internal state, right? So that we have that correspondence between his actions and his mind. So in that sense, he's not living a lie. But more broadly, he's living in a constructed reality
Right.
that is intending to deceive him in some way. It's more it is Descartes' evil genius. That's the existence he's living in, because there is some power constantly seeking to deceive him. Now, I don't know if Christof, the director of the show, I think he would object to saying that he is being deceptive, and he does object
Right.
to the accusation of being deceptive. But in that sense, Truman is living a lie, down to the nearest and closest relationships that he has. I mean, you think his relationship with his mother, right, who
Right.
is credited, the character's name is Mother, which is
Yeah.
funny. Like, she's not given an actual name,
Yeah.
but that's not his mom, right?
Yeah.
Not even his adoptive mom. His adoptive mother, like his adoptive guardian, is this corporation,
Mm-hmm.
which he's turned 18. He's reached the age of majority.
Yes.
Can they
Yes.
control him like this?
Yeah.
But I set that question aside.
Yeah.
Uh, but even there, like, that's not his mother. She's playing a part. His wife is playing a part. Right. And there seems to be
Mm-hmm.
some intimation that there are things being asked of her that she doesn't want to do, but
Right.
it's being asked of her by the corporation,
Right.
not her husband. There's his best friend, right?
Right.
Which the friendship relationship is supposed to be one of the closest relationships you have, and yet it's
Right.
entirely constructed. And so in the one relationship that we see that doesn't seem to be constructed is destroyed.
Yeah.
And so those elements are uh he may be being honest, and he himself may be truthful, but can one be truthful in a world that is full of lies in that way?
Yeah.
And that's a tough question
Mm-hmm.
for him as well, because then
Yeah.
we know ourselves through our relationships. Then
Mm-hmm.
is that sort of deceit affecting his own perception of himself? It has to be in some way.
Yeah, I think, and what this film sort of requires us to do, and which I think is this is a really good film, is that you have to, in asking this question about a lie and truth, is that you really have to look at it from his point of view, right? And I would
Yeah.
say that from his point of view, there's no lie there, right? He's just
Right.
he is accepting the reality that is presented to him, which is perfectly rational, and he doesn't have any reason to question it, maybe any more than a lot of us have, at least at first, right? That it's
Yeah.
perfectly reasonable to accept certain realities as we grow up and as we trust the people around us. I think, though, from the perspective of everyone involved in the Truman Show, you mentioned his mother and his wife, right? And that we can definitely say that they are living a lie. I think they would probably argue that, or maybe from their perspective, it's that this is an acting job, right? Because they're going home to their families when they're not interacting with Truman, presumably, right? Although it seems like they have to live on the lot because they've got to be able to run in when there's an emergency, and his best friend shows up at all hours of the night and when he's needed. And that scene when Truman starts really questioning his reality, and the scene with he and his best friend on the docks and they're having the beer, and um I you kind of wonder what kind of a person that actor could be that really lies to Truman and tries to convince him that, no, I really am your friend, and this is all in your head. And I think he even says, I would never lie to you, or something like that, doesn't he?
After being told to say that by
Yes, yeah, it's in
Christof,
the ear, that's
which
right.
is
He's got like a, yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah,
That's so, oh, that's,
yeah,
ooh,
yeah.
that makes me
And so,
uncomfortable.
yeah, and so I think this is something that that certainly, I mean, I've done a bit of acting and studied theater quite a bit, and I think that's something as an actor you do have to think about when it comes to sort of the roles you choose, and is this piece of artwork presenting the world in a way that I think is false? And in that sense, I think every actor has to, maybe, or they ought to at least, question whether they should be a part of some sort of artistic endeavor if they think it is deceptive and trying to convince people of sort of things that are false. Um, so I think, I don't know how any of those actors, sort of with any good conscience, could possibly to do that. And I think they definitely are living a lie. I think that's pretty clear. Um,
Yeah.
and at first you think that this father, who's killed off, and that's kind of where you have to there's sort of a suspension of disbelief in that they could actually implant this kind of trauma response in Truman,
Yeah.
with some kind of guarantee. But at first you think the father shows back up in the film because he's feeling guilty and he doesn't like what's happened to Truman. But it seems like what ends up happening is, oh no, he just wanted to be part of the show again. That's kind of the
Yeah.
sense that I got. Like
Yeah.
he sneaks himself back on the lot. And then and that's part of the break that Truman has with reality, is that his dad, who he thinks has been dead all these years, he shows up as this homeless man in a city that has no homeless people, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
an idealized city, which is another thing that we definitely need to talk about. And then it seems like, and so I was thinking, oh, okay, here's somebody. I mean, there is one actor with a conscience in the film, right? And that's his college girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
And she definitely feels that this is wrong, that what's happening to Truman is wrong, and tries to do something about it. But so the father shows back up, and I think, oh, here's another person. But then as the film goes on, it's, oh, and then when they reintroduce him, it's like, oh no, he's just here to be back in the TV
Yeah.
show again, and
Yep.
he's going to play this part of not telling Truman the truth, but
Yeah.
reinforcing it. um and so there was, so only the and I forget the character's name, because but the college
Sylvia,
girlfriend,
the
yeah,
girl.
college girlfriend,
Yeah.
clearly, right? Which is another thing that you kind of wonder, to what degree, why Truman doesn't start questioning things a little sooner,
Mm.
with how odd it is that he meets this girl and she tells him these things, and they go to the beach, and all of a sudden her dad shows up, right out of nowhere.
Yeah. She's
He
at a
just
psychotic
happens,
break.
right, he just happens to know right where she is and drives the car on the lot. And
Yep.
it just seems like, but maybe you don't fault Truman with that either, because what exactly is
Yeah.
he supposed to be questioning, right? This is one of the things that
Yeah.
I kind of struggled with trying to think. I try to sort of put myself in Truman's shoes. What exactly is the because presumably he doesn't know what reality television is, right? He doesn't know that this kind of a thing exists, right? And I'm trying to think the TV shows that he watched are very like 1950s sitcom-ish kind of things, right? And so when she gets on and says this is all fake and all, it's like, what is he supposed to believe it is then, right? Because he doesn't have the categories for understanding the greater world, we might say. So I don't know what she exactly thought. I've been talking a long time here, I just realized. What exactly is she supposed to believe? What exactly is she trying to communicate to him? Like what might he even come to believe? Right. So I don't know what she thinks she's going to accomplish. I don't know. That one kind of struck me this time around as like, what exactly is Truman supposed to be questioning about this?
Yeah, I think there's elements. I mean, if we look at the trauma that is used to control him,
Mm-hmm.
which flies in the face of Christof's defense of his actions, which is like, I've given him,
Yes.
this good, he was an unwanted child.
Right.
He's, I think the implication might be that he was going to be aborted or something, or at least
Yeah. I don't know.
given up anyway, saying he was an
Yeah.
unwanted pregnancy.
Yeah.
Then he is so he's raised in this way, all of the world being constructed around him, right? And the crew members wear the shirt, protect him, love him. That's like
Mm-hmm.
their motto, which is,
Right.
that's creepy.
Yeah.
But then they control him through
Mm-hmm.
this trauma around his, the death of his father.
Right.
And so he has this fear of water, fear of leaving
Mm-hmm.
this town he's lived in his whole life.
Yeah.
Um, and one might think him becoming an insurance salesman could be so he knows very well how fragile life is, and so all of these things, right, they're designed to keep him, I don't know what the word would be, quiescent, like intellectually quiescent, like he's not supposed to think about things. I mean, um his wife is continually distracting him.
Mm-hmm.
His best friend, every time there seems to be some sort of breakthrough, his friend shows up with beer and it's like, hey, let's go. No, no, no. And so, and I guess that's part of the advantage of having a constructed world, is that if you're running it, you can arrange it to where anytime there might be some breakthrough, you can interrupt that breakthrough
Right.
with some distraction or with some, changing the scene. And so then that uh, takes them and, oh, now we're over here. And then you don't let them return to it, and how dismissive everyone is of these questions that he has. And social pressure is very strong. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you're like, man, did you notice this? This is weird. And your best friend, whom you know and trust, you've been friends since you were kids, which that's a creepy line. They've been best friends since 7 years old. That, what sort of sociopathic child did you find to become his friend at 7 years old and know that, like, and they're not raised believing that all of this is real? And your best friend, whom you trust and you love, says, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, that's
Yeah.
okay. And then they move on. What are you going to do? You're just gonna be like, all right, I guess I'm seeing things, or like, this is weird. Um, or if your wife, your mother, these people that you rely on, like, you're gonna be the one that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and you're just gonna dismiss it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think you're right. I think the best friend issue is, you're right. That idea that they've been friends since they were 7, right? And what kind of a person would be able to, one, keep that lie for that long and not be bothered by sort of this world that you've sort of lied to
mhm,
Truman about. And I do think that of the people in the, even maybe more than Christof, that his best friend may be the most evil character in the film, right? There's no way you can really
yeah.
love Truman and do all of those things. But I'm also, I mean, it's not a huge leap to see that this kind of a thing is related to sort of Plato's allegory of the cave, right?
Yeah.
That people are born into these controlled, constructed realities that, for Plato, were controlled by politicians and the sort of religious beliefs
Poets,
and things, poets,
actors,
Right.
Ooh.
Right. So it's not, yeah. So it's not that big of a stretch to see that the film may be making sort of, to some degree, maybe a commentary on that there is a sense in which we maybe are, we ourselves are presented with a certain kind of constructed reality, maybe. Um, and that then to question that requires so much um, commitment to truth, right? Because today, right, you get written off as sort of a conspiracy theorist if you at all question sort of official
Yeah.
narratives of the way everybody accepts it this way, and
Experts
there's a
say.
yeah, right, and there
Yep.
is a degree to which though that you do have to rely on to some degree experts, and that
Yeah.
our community is, community, it's built upon trust, and so to really question that really does pull in the social pressure of having to stand out and be alone, right? Because that, I mean, that is what Christof does say, right? He does that great interview where the interviewer who's sort of, he said, some people say that this is, and he brings this up, and Christof's response is, let me see if I can find it here. He says he could leave at any time if he was more than just if it was more than just a vague ambition. If he was absolutely determined to discover the truth, there's no way we could prevent him. Right.
Yeah.
I don't, boy, I, that takes a lot of sort of grit and gumption to have that kind of determination of, no, I want to know what's true. And I think most people probably don't have that because it requires
Yeah.
questioning my reality. It requires questioning my identity and the narratives that I have for myself. And I think most people, I think it's maybe Kierkegaard who says, people talk a lot about the truth, but the last thing anybody really wants is the truth, right? Because we're much more comfortable with the falsehoods that we've accepted, and aren't willing to, even if there's a glimpse that they might be wrong, will create ways to justify it and to make sure we don't have to climb and claw ourselves sort of up out of the cave into those kinds of things. So I don't know if I agree with
Yeah.
Christof there. Well, maybe I do. That if you are determined, it will take you there. But maybe he underestimates how difficult that actually is. I don't know.
Well, and we see what leads up to Truman, like the determination is seen when he's on the boat at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
film, and
Yes.
Christoph's trying to like drown him essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, in Christoph's view, he crosses that line. He's demonstrated the determination, and so
Yeah.
he's free to go.
Yes.
But you see throughout the film the cracks in the constructed reality getting bigger. I mean, from
Right.
the get-go, the light falling
Yeah.
and crashing, and
Right.
an explanation is given, right, over the radio.
Right.
Airplane was,
Which is
it fell off
reasonable,
an
right? Because
airplane.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you look at it now and you might be tempted to say, "Oh, this is a really big reveal." But if I came upon, like, if a light fell, like if I'm walking down the street right now and a theater light falls, I mean, I'm not going to start questioning reality. I would actually assume that, well, it must have fallen out of a plane or
Yeah.
something, right?
Well, that
Like,
was weird.
yeah,
Anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
And that's what Truman does.
right.
Through the course, like the first half of the film is the action of the film is him encountering, right,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that dramatic tension, the dramatic
Yeah,
irony of the audience knowing
right.
this is the cracks in the constructed reality, but Truman just being like, huh, anyway, and
Right.
moving on,
Yeah.
until it becomes too much.
Right.
And it seems to me that it becomes too much again when it's the relationships
Mm-hmm.
that start to crack. And I think that
Yes.
that's real. I mean, that says something about the human need for relationship and community, because the physical world is breaking down. He keeps seeing things that are weird and like running into stuff. But it's when he starts to question, right? He goes home and he's trying to convince his wife, like,
Right.
do you not notice these things as well? Um, and that's one of the great things, like with my wife, is I'll come home and I'll be like, hey, this is weird. but have you noticed this too? And if she's like, no, I don't think so, I'll say, yeah, all right, I must be weird. Well, but a
Must
lot of
just be
times she's
me.
like, I noticed that. She's like, I noticed
Yeah.
that too. That is weird. And it's like, okay, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And so we use that check for
Yeah.
ourselves, like our own perceptions. But it's when those cracks,
Yeah.
right? And part of it seems to be, again, intimated that she's not fully bought in as much as Christof wants her to be, and that
Yeah.
they have to replace her to get the
Yes.
on-screen pregnancy, which that's also
Right.
really creepy and weird.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but in that moment where she like breaks into product placement and he just
Yes.
yells, "Who are
Yeah.
you talking
Yeah.
to?"
Yeah.
And she can't defend it.
Yeah.
That I think is where he takes that turn, and now it's like,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
I must discover what is actually going on here,
Yes. Yeah.
because something is definitely wrong.
Yeah.
And then that's exacerbated the return of his father, right? His mother's behavior, right? That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so as on the one hand, Christof and the corporation are trying to patch those cracks.
Right.
They're making it worse because ultimately, I mean, the truth will win out, right? Reality
Yeah.
is undefeated.
Yeah.
And so it can't, like, the hubris of Christof to think he can keep it going. And that's an interesting character. I mean, megalomania of Christof. But I think that's what happens with Truman is he develops, right. And I think that's what happens to us as well. Not just in the film, is that when our model of reality doesn't fit, like the lack of fit becomes so apparent that we're forced to go and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, that line I think is different for different people.
Yeah.
I think, but it creates a discomfort in us when our model
Yeah.
doesn't fit. And sometimes we ignore it, which Truman does. We get distracted, right? Very Pascalian, right? We fill our lives with distractions so we don't notice. Um, and then, but at a certain point, I mean, the brakes come off and you have to go figure it out, or
Yeah.
else you collapse. I think,
Yeah.
I don't, well, actually, I say all of that, but
But I
I
think
don't
you do.
know for
Yeah.
a lot of people,
Yeah.
actually. I think
Yeah.
for, I think for, well, man, that's a tough one. I don't
Yeah.
want to be a pessimist about humanity, but
Yeah.
maybe I have to be. I
Yeah.
want to be optimistic,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I do
yeah.
think that is the ultimate argument of the film, right? Is that I think that the argument of the film is that we may have these constructs, these lies, but ultimately, right, they do break down. Like there is
Mhm.
some truth to the world that that it doesn't, that when we don't live according to what is real, right, that there is going to be a breakdown. And I mean, we either have to accept it and just go back to living, as you say, distract ourselves and all of that,
Mm.
or we have to sort of push through in a very determined way. Um, but I do think that is the ultimate argument of the film, is that
Yeah.
it's yeah, that maybe that I think I'm just trying to figure out how to put this right, because you might argue, because you might read the film as saying all reality is just these different constructs and there's no truth to it, and it's just one lie over another, right? Because that's what Christof
Mhm.
says at the end, right? When Truman's getting ready
Yep.
to go through the wall, Christof says there's no more truth out there than there is in the world I created for you, right? But that's of course the
Yeah.
villain saying that, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
right, he says it's the same lies, the same deceits, but in this world, right, you have nothing to fear. And that as well may be a big driving force for humanity, right? When things are
Yeah.
perfect and good and ideal, we have a certain discomfort in that, right? There's
Yeah.
plenty of good science fiction that explores utopian societies, and why they always break down is because humanity doesn't want
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
It violates something very inherent in us, that we need sort of conflict, and we need, which is, you can even look at it from just a purely materialistic view, is that what drives the world is sort of conflict, and that's what causes growth, and that, right, in that sense.
All right, Thomas
that we
Hobbes.
need that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like even from a purely sort of secular materialistic view, evolutionary
I mean
view.
that underlies all of Darwinism, right?
Right.
Darwinian
Right.
thought.
Right. But then I think there is some truth to that with regard to why we reject um, too much comfort. And you look at people whose lives are very, very comfortable, right? There is a sense in which then they are naive to what is real, and there is a sense of I'm owed certain things, and entitlement, right? And ignoring sort of reality and harsh conditions of things. And we don't really, that we crave this kind of conflict maybe. But that also may be, from a theological point of view, that also may be driven by sin ultimately, right? That we can't be content with sort of happiness and goodness because we ourselves are disordered, and that may be. But I don't know if that's what drives this. That's not what drives this, I don't think. But the idea that Truman would, that I think it's a good point you make, that what ultimately sets it off for Truman is the break in relationships, because he does go through he starts a testing phase, right? He says, let's see if, but again, the difficulty I had watching this is, what is he testing? Like, what does he think is real? And he's just throwing anything against the wall and just seeing what happens, right? For me, I think it really happened. What really makes it click for him is when he tries to drive away and you have the magic traffic jams, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets far enough away that there's the nuclear fallout all of the sudden. It's like that to me at that point. Okay, for
and
Truman, it's just beyond
him
belief.
Truman.
Yeah.
And
yes.
He's like, how do you know my name? Like, that is.
Yeah.
There's a relationship that he has that he doesn't know about.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And so that there is that breaking point where, okay, clearly things aren't as they appear, whatever they happen to be. And you do kind of wonder what is in Truman's mind when he's walking through the door at the end. Because it's interesting, he never answers Christof, right? He never, when Christof says the world is out there is just full of lies as well, Truman says, he just bows and walks out, right? There's no more rebuttal. There's no more, right, any of that. And the other interesting point is that the whole premise of the Truman Show is that people want authenticity, right? They're tired of sort of fake actors, and they're tired. That's the whole opening sort of speech that Christof gives, is they want real world and real life. And so they create a fake world in order to get the real life, right? But then it's so striking at the end. They go back to the people watching the Truman Show when he finally walks out, and they're like, "Okay, what else is on?" Right? It's like there's no.
Yeah, I love that. It's so funny. Yeah, get the TV guide.
yeah, right. And so there is that irony of, well, people want what's real. And so maybe the argument of the film is that, well, there's no such thing as what's real when it comes to sort of television and film, and they're always going to be. So I don't know, is that a Platonic argument that the art is less real than the world? I don't know if that's the argument of the film, but that did strike me this way. It's like, okay, people want what's real, and so we present what's fake. And there is certainly that impulse today. Do we really want what's real?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, and that's a common trope, right? In quote unquote, like quasi reality. I mean, like Impractical Jokers,
right?
Punked, right? Everything in the tradition of Punked, right? Scare tactics, like these shows where you're placing people in contrived situations to get a reaction out of them,
right?
And that reaction is seen as real, more real. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's difficult. It made me think. The Christof at the end reminds me of Prospero in the Tempest to Miranda, because he's kept Miranda on this island to keep her safe from this dangerous world.
Right.
When really that's been a cruelty to her.
Yes.
Not least which because Caliban is there, but that's you know. there's a lot going on with that too.
Yeah.
But then these sailors wash up, and she sees men for the first time, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, what are these?"
Was it Strange New World? Or what brave new world is this with such creatures?
Yeah, and then at the end, right, Miranda says,
Yeah.
"Oh, wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is! Oh, brave new world that has such people in it." Actions at the beginning where she's very like, "Hey, what's up with this?" And then
It
the
is an Act 5.
negotiation
It's
between
crazy.
her. Yeah.
In my mind, I was thinking, which you think I
That's
should
where
know that
Huxley
because
gets the title.
yeah.
And there's so much there. If you think about,
So we did have this question about like Seahaven, which is the town that is constructed for Truman, right? That Christof builds this world that is perfectly fit for the story, and it's. Do you think that the argument of the film is Seahaven then a lie, or is it just another constructed, engineered kind of truth? Right? Is it any less true than the world we're presented through the manipulation of media and other things? Is it any less real?
I think it depends on if you agree with Christof that we accept the reality we're presented with. If you think that your kind of initial sensory perception is the totality of what is real, then it is like it is real. It just happens to be artificially constructed, right? But then, how is that different from the towns and cities that we live in, the homes that we live in, the cars that we drive? Those are all constructed. So are they any less real, any more real than Seahaven? Or, right, it is false because it is, it's, again, it's intended to deceive. The people there are not living real lives. And so then what is meant by a real life? Right. And so is a real life one in which you are actively making your way through the world? But then how is that different from what Truman is doing?
Yeah.
Truman's actively making his way through the world. There's constraints on it, and there's he's limited in many ways, but his interactions, and he has glimpses of breaking out of the mold that is given to him, right? He has saved the sweater of Sylvia,
Yes.
and he
Yeah.
returns to it. He has the
Oh yeah,
map
and he's
of
building the
Fiji.
face, right? That's a great.
He's building the face.
Yes. Yeah.
That is so there is an element of that's reality breaking through. And he's making, right, he's the pastiche of the face. But that represents something real because that was real. His feelings towards her and her feelings towards him, that was actually real.
Yeah.
We could say it's because it's authentic, but I'm not sure. I don't really like the use of the language of authenticity in relationship to this.
Yeah, I think that, so, I mean, as you were describing it, it makes me think that let me see if I got my train of thought off here. Is it that much different than the way that, so this is presented to Truman from the outside, but is it any different than the way what a lot of us do is that we construct our own sort of narratives and we build relationships, we build our careers and those kinds of things to sort of become our reality. And it seems like maybe the argument of the film is that if we take Plato's Allegory, right, the idea would be that, well, this world is the Truman Show. Right. And so we get glimpses, and I don't know if this is the argument of the film. I'd have to think about it more. That the idea is that in the world that we live in, right, are there glimpses of things from the outside that are trying to get at us, that there's something more than just this world, right? That there's a reality beyond just sort of the physical that's trying to glimpse into and communicate to us. And it's only the person who is really committed and determined to discover the truth that's going to question the things that are presented in this world to get to something beyond, maybe even something supernatural. Because certainly, I mean, what Truman, I mean, I don't know, from Truman's perspective, walking through that door has to be a kind of supernatural event, right? That there is something beyond the world that's presented to him. And so I wonder, do you think that's a charitable way to read the film? Is it arguing that the world we live in is the Truman Show, and we have to sort of be so determined to know what truth is that we're willing to walk through the horizon, so to speak?
I don't know if consciously
Mm,
that is what is being got at, but I do think that is part of why this story resonates.
mm,
It because it is demonstrating this transcendent truth, that you know the world is not just stuff,
yeah,
right? Materialism ultimately fails because it doesn't address the transcendental desires of man, of humanity. And so to have, um in general, right, and so to have Truman, yeah, it's very Dantean. It reminded me of Dante at the beginning of the Divine Comedy. As I was thinking about it, he awakes midway through the journey of life in a dark wood. He doesn't know how he got there. He's confused. What is going on around him? And that's Truman at the end of this film.
yeah,
He has awoken in a dark wood.
mm-hmm,
He doesn't know what's going on, what is real around him. And now he is, there's no Virgil character or anything, but
right,
he's having to take that step. And they're both
mm-hmm,
30 years old, right? Dante is
yeah,
30 at the beginning of the Divine Comedy.
right,
And uh, Truman's 30. Well, it's been on the air for 30 years or
yeah,
something.
something like that, yeah, close enough.
But so it's this idea of he's having this midlife crisis,
Mm-hmm,
right? And he wakes up to the way his life has been is
mm-hmm,
not real, and now he needs to find a real life.
yeah,
Um, and so I think that's why this story works so well, because it's touching on that truth that if we persist in a artificially constructed reality, eventually it's not satisfying. We don't derive meaning from it. It's very shallow, and that's not going to we're not going to be happy. We're not going to be satisfied, um, in that, because we're disjointed in our souls, um, in that way. Again, though, I don't know. I don't think the film is consciously doing that, but I think that's why
mm.
it works, in that way.
Well, I don't
So
know, because certainly you can
yeah,
read. I mean, Christof is literally the man in the sky, right?
yeah,
He's
the man in the moon.
right. I also, on the rewatch, I forgot you have a young Paul Giamatti is in this film as well, which
That's
was fun to
right.
see him again. It's like, oh, look at this. And so Christof is, I mean, he's a bit of a caricature as well. I mean, he even dresses in the black Nehru jacket and right. He's got the what would later be the Dr. Evil kind of look, right?
Yes.
Which comes about after this film, I'm pretty
Very
sure.
dramatically taking
Yeah.
off and putting on the
Yes.
glasses. Oh,
Yes.
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 He's
Yeah.
very
And it's,
sinister.
yeah, with not only that, but he himself is a bit of a hypocrite, right? Because in that interview,
Yeah.
the guy points out, well, thank you for giving us this interview because we know how much you crave your privacy, right? He's
Yeah.
something like that, right? He says you're a very
Yep.
private person who
Yep.
doesn't give interviews. It's like, so the most very
What?
private person has completely violated the privacy of this other
Yeah.
person, right? That's his. So
Yeah.
it's so that's another way that he is this absolute, really absolute villain in this film, right?
Yep.
And it is good to see that there is at least some movement in the outside world. There are free Truman movements, right?
Yes.
That are
A
going on,
small but vocal
right?
minority.
Right? Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Which
Very
again, right?
downplayed.
Which again is kind of sometimes what we're presented with, right?
Yeah.
The people who are trying to tell us that there's something more, right, are always going to run against the mob who simply always accepts reality as
Yeah.
it's presented to them.
The
Um,
Demos.
yes, yes, right.
Mm.
And so I think that's philosophically this idea of the pursuit of truth is what I think the film ultimately argues. And of course, you've got philosophers who argue that there is no such thing as pursuit of truth; it's all power. But I don't think that's not really the argument of this film. I think this film really does make the idea that truth does matter, and that living according to reality, even when everything is sort of that it requires a
Hmm.
kind of determination. as Christof says, right? We have to be determined wherever the truth may lead us to go to, and that there's something that drives us as humans to want that, and that it's good for us to do that, that we need to live in conformity to what's real. And that we can't, that many people do accept it, but that it's the ultimate good life, if you will, is going to require this uncomfortable questioning of some of the constructs we may be presented with.
Well, and if we take the Nietzschean view,
Mm-hmm.
then this ending was impossible.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
right? Without there being an actual truth. If what we call truth is just an exertion of power over others,
Yeah.
then Truman would have not been successful in escaping.
Right.
The reason he's able to overcome the power that Christof holds over his life is because there is a truth out there
Yeah.
that is transcendent, beyond the power that Christof wields. And so I mean, that's just, I mean, that belays that argument, right away.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other point there is the how rare it is for someone to pursue and discover truth. And that's again very Platonic. I mean, Plato might be the
Yeah.
best to interpret this film through, because he does, right, it's all images, shadows on the wall,
Right.
and then the pain of being drug out of that, um and that it's rare. It's rare for someone to have that desire. Now, Truman's the only one that could have that desire,
Right.
because he's the only one being deceived in that way. But I think it's a very much reminiscent of the allegory of the cave in that respect.
Yeah.
And how else to describe Christof except as kind of a philosopher-king, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that is able to take the time to think, to plan, and then you have all the crew members are the guardians, right? And
I would say he's a
we could
malicious
draw this
philosopher
out.
king. I don't.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no,
I don't.
he is not a
Yeah. I
good
don't think.
man.
Yeah.
He
So I
is
don't
not
think he's.
illuminated by the light of goodness.
Yeah. He's not a lover
Not
of
in any
wisdom. I don't
way.
think. Yeah. Yeah.
No, well, he's a lover of sights and sounds. He's a television producer. He's a lover
Yes.
of sights and sounds.
Yes.
And he's a megalomaniac.
Yes.
And that is, he conceives of himself as God,
Yes.
over Truman, which is all the way down to the pseudo philosophical justifications for enslaving somebody for the
Yeah.
entertainment. I mean, that's but yeah, there are those elements of Christof being this monster, but clothing himself in the uniform of the philosopher, the uniform of the and he's like, I bring joy to millions. I bring
Yeah.
joy to millions. And you hear about the lives of like child television stars. They brought joy to millions, but they're wrecked, right? They're wrecked spiritually, intellectually, emotionally. And that's, what bigger child TV star than Truman Burbank, right? And so it's no wonder. I mean, it's a miracle if he survives, I guess.
Yeah. I agree.
But then I consider, though, if we want to shift to kind of what we think about it, it's kind of like the what's the joke? It's like we finally built the Death Dealer 9000 from the classic story. Don't build the Death Dealer 9000.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, it's like a meme joke, but it's essentially that we have these tech people now that read the cautionary science fiction tales of 30, 40 years ago, and they're like, oh, I want to build the thing they're warning against.
Oh, okay.
Because Truman lives his life on screen. He lives in a constructed reality. How much more so today? I mean, we have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people trying to turn themselves into Trumans.
Yeah.
Where they're like, you have vloggers,
right? Every bit of their lives they're
influencers.
recording and posting and sharing, and and the one thing they all have in common is that their brand is it's my authenticity.
Yeah,
right.
I'm authentic.
Yeah,
authenticity.
That's the common brand of all of them.
Notice what it's not. It's not honesty.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I don't want to use that language of authenticity
Right.
around this
Right.
because it's a lie in so many
Yeah.
ways. You want to be honest, not authentic,
Yeah.
because the world says your authentic self essentially is the playing out of your, emotions and desires.
Right.
Sometimes your emotions and desires are wrong. Maybe you
Mhm.
need to change. Like, you're not a good person.
Yeah.
But people,
Yeah.
and why do they do it? It gives them attention. It gives them maybe some form of meaning. But then
Yeah.
if you look at how many of these people flame out, how they're not, there's
Yeah.
no sense of satisfaction or meaning in their lives
Yeah.
and all of these things. And it is sad because they can't have they turn themselves into content, into something to be consumed.
Yeah.
Which I thought then, or it triggered me at the beginning of the film when it's that first shot of Truman in the mirror and
Mhm.
he's like playing pretend or whatever. And he's like, oh, you have to go on without me. And if I die, use my body as an alternative source of food. It's like, wow,
That's literally what's happening
that's
to, yeah, it's, well,
that
not
is
literally, but
what it
that's
is.
figuratively is what's happening. Yeah.
He's been turned into something to be consumed.
Yeah.
And that's dystopian. That
Yes.
is tragic. That is diabolical in so many ways. And yet, what is it, 35 years later, whatever, 30 years later, thousands of people do that intentionally.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's sad. I don't have
Yeah.
a solution. Just
No, I don't
sad.
either. Yeah. And even when there is, even when the, the authentic influencer, because the idea is they're only sort of presenting the, as things go well and all of that, but then you also have the things go bad post, right? I'm going to show this struggle with this to show my
Yeah.
authentic, but even that's a performance, right?
Yeah,
That's not,
it is.
I would say if, yeah, the really authentic things, yeah, I think you keep to yourself. But yeah, I agree with that. I always think that the worst advice, since we mentioned Shakespeare, is that, to thine own self to be true and to just be
Oh,
yourself. It's like,
yeah.
but what if I'm a terrible
Polonius.
person? Right? If I'm a terrible
Exactly.
person, I shouldn't be
Exactly.
myself. Right? Be better than yourself. Right? Is what we always want to say.
Well, I always laugh because people quote that as if it's some great wisdom, but it's
Right.
said by the arch fool.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Polonius is one of the most foolish characters in all
Yeah.
of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And he's just rattling off these pithy sayings to Laertes.
Empty
like,
platitudes.
To thine own self be true.
Yeah.
Guess what? Laertes was to his own self be true, and he died.
Yeah.
He was killed.
Yeah.
And that's oops.
Yeah.
Right? Polonius was to his own self be true, and he got killed. Like, all of these.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I could rant about.
Well, everybody gets killed
character
there.
for so
So
long.
Yeah.
Everyone dies except oh no, I don't remember his name. The Norwegian who comes in and takes over. Anyway, disorder and something's rotten in Denmark. Anyway,
right.
But yeah, there's a but there again's an example in Hamlet, an example of a constructed reality that collapses.
Yeah.
Because there's cracks in it. Though one could say, what's the origin of the ghost of Hamlet's father? Is that even actually Hamlet's father?
Right.
And that is a theme we see in literature, in the stories told throughout history, is that when we construct an artificial reality, actual reality always breaks through.
Yeah.
I mean, even back to, how do you say, Oedipus Rex, right? It's a false reality that gets broken through, and then tragedy ensues. I guess that's kind of is this a tragedy or a comedy, right? If comedies end in marriage, tragedies end in death, is Truman stepping through the door, that's a type of death.
Yeah. No, I think this is definitely a comedy, right? I think
dies.
this is a happy ending film. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, happy ending, sad ending doesn't make it a tragedy.
No, that's what
if we're thinking Aristotelian.
Right, but that's what I mean, right? It's not. In that sense, it falls under comedy. I think in the sense of that there is this, right? There is this, yeah. Well,
it's optimistic kind of for sure.
Yes, yeah.
Well, and you see Sylvia, right? She's running to go meet him, so maybe that's implied.
Yeah,
or at least they have a chance now, which is more than they did.
Yeah, and I maybe the good thing for Truman is that the reality that he's going to discover isn't really all that different than the reality he's been living in, right? So maybe it's not as it's a huge psychological thing to do, but then he's going to discover that it's not all that different, maybe. So I don't know. But I guess we aren't really presented with, I mean, it is also a fake world outside the Truman Show. So I don't know. I don't know how that ends though. So,
but well, I mean, the major difference though is that people aren't, like, the people around him will be real.
Yeah.
In that sense.
As far as he knows.
Maybe that's, yeah. Well, as much as we lie to each other, it's not like he wasn't, keeping secrets from his wife.
I mean, this is an interesting question of, so Truman, I mean, you kind of start, so if we start projecting time-wise, so at what point, how does Truman ever come to accept that, okay, the reality that I'm in now is real? What if this is just a bigger sphere that I'm living in?
It's like The Game with Michael Douglas.
Yes. Yeah.
That movie's,
yeah. That, or even a film like The Matrix. One of the things that always bothered me about The Matrix is that when Neo gets out of the Matrix, he never questions the reality he's now presented with, it seemed like. Right? I don't know. We don't need to talk about The Matrix, but but anyway.
Well, I think it might be a good comparison at some point because that late 90s is that period, because you have The Matrix, you have The Truman Show, you have Office Space, you have these movies where
Awakening.
And a lot of them it's mediated by technology. I mean, even in Office Space, it's the printer frustration with that new technology. It's technology that, right, the effect of technology onto our lives that makes us feel disassociated, and that we have to wake up from. I mean, because even Christof says in this film, Truman Show, that the technology grew with Truman. And so they developed new technologies to maintain the facade as he grew. And that's another interesting avenue of approach, is the effect of technology. But that goes beyond this. I mean, the central question though is that question of truth in Truman's life. What is true? What is not true? What is real? Right. I think if you think in terms of like the pragmatists, like, well, truth is what works in the reality you're presented with. And eventually it no longer works for Truman. And so he has to find a new truth to deal with this new reality. And so maybe that's the positive ending for him, is that he is more free, less encumbered to discover the truths that apply to him. Now, I think that's shallow. It will ultimately be unsatisfying, but it's a starting place before seeking that transcendent truth beyond. I don't know.
All right. Well, I think that's a good space to end. Yeah.
There's no resolution. There really is no resolution.
Yeah. Well, I think there is. I think the film. Yeah, but I think the argument of the film is that Truman has been set free in such a way that he can pursue truth in ways that it was prevented from him in his life so far. So
he's out from under the thumb of somebody who does not have his best interests at heart, no matter what he says.
All right, very good. So, well,
try and stitch together that ending.
Yeah. I'll figure something out.
End out a bang.
Very good. Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Nathaniel, for a great conversation.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to get that much out of it. There's a lot.
Of course, there is a lot, and a lot more. Truman spent 30 years never questioning his reality until the cracks got too big to ignore. So here's the question. If your own life had a Truman moment, some comfortable illusion you've been living inside without realizing it, would you actually want to know? Drop your answer in the comments, and thanks for joining us. If you want to keep looking for the wisdom of the ages in the films of today, make sure to follow or subscribe to Socrates at the Cinema wherever you're listening. Pull up a seat with us to explore great ideas through great films by having great conversations.